So the question that was asked was about science and the science-backed questions that other companies state that they've got in their platforms. This is Amazing Workplace, and we measure and improve employee happiness, which is what we have scientifically found matters more to employees than things like engagement or satisfaction based on survey results and based on information that we've gathered. So, what's really interesting is that we do often run into situations where companies come to us and ask us for the science behind the happiness conversations or the science behind the questions that we're asking, which are often just simply how people feel about topics and how that compares with engagement or other platforms that have claims on their website that they've got scientifically backed questions, so forth and so on. So I want to set that aside for a moment because I don't want to get into right now a deep dive on like what is the definition of science, what does that word actually mean, so as not to upset or frustrate people. And I want to just simply look at the outcomes. Okay, so if I were to come to you and I were to say, hey, I have this tool that's been used for 20 years to measure how people feel, and I have proof, science, that the improvement with employees has not happened. I can prove to you that over 20 years, things have actually gotten worse using this tool. Is that something that you would want to buy? And I think that's a big part of what's missing. There's articles, there are scholarly, brilliant people that are saying engagement isn't working. And they're pointing to the statistics, they're pointing to the numbers, they're pointing to the fact that engagement has gone down by 3% if you're using, is it Qualtrics, I think? It's been level, hasn't gone anywhere if you're using Gallup. It's gone down if you're using Culture Amp. Like you look at the leading providers of engagement surveys in the US or worldwide for that matter, and the numbers haven't gotten any better. Well, that's pure math. That's like the best kind of science. That's like physics science. That's like, hey, there it is, right? Here's the speed of the thing. So the science doesn't support that engagement in any way is improving anything. And the science backed air quotes questions that are used or statements that are used that were co-opted and or copy and pasted from morale surveys that existed in the 1950s have not meaningfully improved things, which is why it went from morale to satisfaction to engagement, is that there wasn't any improvement. And every 20 years, we've just relabeled the thing that we're measuring and we're using the same doggone questions with a few added ones. The quote unquote science that we get asked about, it's very difficult for us to be polite when we get asked these questions because there's nothing there that supports that this is working. There's absolutely nothing there. Now, I don't mean to say that companies have failed to use these tools to make improvement. Some people have been able to use these tools to genuinely improve things within their organization. And it's because those organizations are committed to the process of listening, understanding, making change. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But if we look at the tools that they're using to measure how people feel, if we look at the results that they are given to then affect that change quickly and effectively, or to try to get change done easily, they're just crappy tools asking crappy questions that just don't particularly matter to most employees, some of which do, some of which don't. So a happiness conversation that really understands how people feel and why they feel that way is a much more effective way to improve things. And the science and or the math behind our organization is that we have consistently seen meaningful improvement within organizations that use our platform. And the happiness goes up over time. And I'm happy to go through some examples. Obviously, I need to get permission from certain companies to actually present like the detailed results from an individual company. But globally speaking, we do have an improvement in happiness for organizations that are working with Amazing Workplace. And it's because we're focusing for the first time on something that people understand. We're actually measuring it in a way that is accurate. It's not black box weird scoring. It's purely like, hey, here's the exact number of people that said they were happy. Imagine walking into a room and you've got all of your happy people over in one corner, you've got all your satisfied people over in another corner, and you've got all of your unhappy people in another corner. And there's no weird scoring. It's just purely like, hey, there's 5 people over there. Those are the happy people. There's 17 unhappy people over there. It's a very different way to organize and structure the information about how your people are feeling at work. And then connected to that is how they feel about individual topics. So there's an overall happiness, and then there's the individual topics that we're talking with them about and how happy they feel about those topics. And then connected to all of that, of course, is why do I feel happy if I'm happy? And if I'm not, what would make me feel happier? And you bring that information together into a platform, and it's a much easier way to accurately measure how people are doing. And it's a much easier way to then take that information and do something about it. And I think that's the key, is that when I hear about people asking about the science behind questions or the science behind other people's questions, I was like, well, time out. Like, what's the end result? Like, what has been the end result of measuring engagement for the last 20 years? Well, the end result has been that engagement has gone down. That's been the end result. It has not meaningfully improved in any way. So are we really measuring the right thing? I mean, if we're measuring something that either can't be improved or doesn't improve, then is it the right thing to measure? And there's a whole history here of shifting every 20 years. You know, we went from morale in the 50s to satisfaction in the 80s to engagement in the 2000s. So if we had this dialed in or nailed 100 years ago, it wouldn't have changed. Companies are being experimented on, and there's a lot of literature that supports and suggests that people just genuinely want to be happy. Engagement and other made up metrics or quote unquote science-based surveys don't do it. Anyhow, hopefully that helps kind of tackle that a little bit. Probably a lot more to talk about. I'm sure I've probably upset some people by saying what I've said, but I've never met an employee that loves taking an engagement survey. But I've got over 12,000 5-star reviews from employees that have taken a happiness conversation and who have made the time to say, hey, this is way better than any survey I've ever taken. Maybe that's science.